Welcome to As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Today we welcome Carlos Alverez, guitarist for power doom band Behölder, to the podcast. Behölder released in the Temple of the Tyrant on April 25th with Black Lion Records. Carlos talks about what stuck and what didn't of his family's musical influence, trying to find his place when a power metal scene didn't exist, how doom metal and Dungeons and Dragons collide with Behölder, and a lot more. This was a super fun chat, and I think Temple of the Tyrant is an excellent record and worth spending some time with. You can find a link in the show notes to the Bandcamp page to check that album out, and please do. Thanks so much for listening to As the Story Grows. If you're brand new to the podcast, welcome. Thanks for checking us out. You can find links in the show notes or at asthestorygrows.com for our mailing list, our Discord community, and our Patreon page where you can support the show financially and get early access to every episode. I recently updated the design for asthestorygrows.com, making it easier to find links to all of those things. And if you just like what you're hearing and don't want to miss an episode, like discovering new music and new bands, please subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. I appreciate it. Enjoy today's conversation with Carlos Alverez from Behölder. I just clicked over to the page with the band from Texas, and it is very much not you guys.
Oh God, yeah. Well, I mean, look, I'll be the first to admit we don't have the most original name, but it wasn't intended to be original. It was just intended to be fun.
Yeah.
Which is why we got the the umlaut and stuff, on the useless umlaut on the O and all. It was just tongue in cheek, like Motley Crue or Motorhead or something. So
yeah. If you're just outside Philly, where just outside Philly?
Basically Ben Salem, Levittown area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. I lived in Philadelphia for 6 years, so
okay.
I have a general knowledge of the area, but yeah. So
yeah, just I'm about 5 minutes away from like the northeast border. So
okay, nice. That's cool. Is that where you grew up?
No, I mean, I grew up in Brooklyn, in New York, and then we moved to PA when I was a kid, maybe like 6 or something. And I just been kind of like, in mostly the suburb areas, but for a while I was living in like the northeast area and stuff for a couple of years, and now I'm here, just shy of the northeast area.
Yeah.
So,
Nice. Yeah. What was growing up like?
Noisy. I mean, we traded one set of sounds for another. You trade a lot of traffic noises and stuff for. I remember one of the first places we lived was like right across the street from train tracks. So
That's
very
cool.
noisy.
Nice. What then gets you into music?
What got me into music? I don't know. I guess I've kind of, I've always been into music, honestly. I guess people always say that and it sounds corny, but, I mean, I'm old. Okay. So my earliest memories are like, the first handful of Kiss albums and stuff like the, mid, late 70s. And I was even as a kid. I mean, I was a kid then. I wasn't like a teenager or anything, but I was a kid. But I was fascinated by Kiss, because of the makeup and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And my parents were kind of hippies, so there was always some good records laying around with some stems and seeds in the middle of them and stuff. And you just kind of gravitate to what's around you. And so my childhood was filled with a lot of watching Cheech and Chong and listening to Judas Priest and Black Sabbath and Queen and Kiss. And so, I got pictures of me when I'm 4 years old, between 4 and 6. And every year I was going out as a different member of Kiss and stuff. And my mom would do my makeup, so.
Nice.
Yeah. So I've always been into music, and my one uncle who passed, he was really hardcore into music, and he kind of like forced me to start listening to a lot of different things to appreciate music as a whole, and not just for whatever I was kind of interested in at the moment. So because of him, a lot of stuff didn't stick, but the stuff that did stick really stuck, like a lot of classical music and things like that. He'd still be mad at me now if he heard me say the Hendrix never took, but the classical music did. So
nice.
And that paved the way a lot of cool stuff for me, with the power metal stuff I've done, with the prog stuff I've done, and it even has it has some roads in some of the stuff I do with the doom metal stuff too. So
yeah,
it's all based in melody. So
yeah. I mean, 2 points. One, there's so much of like the classic rock stuff that like that generation of music where it's just like, I get it. I understand why people like it. So much of it does not do anything for me. Like,
sure,
I get it. But I'm just not, doesn't vibe. And second, like, yeah, there's some line between like classical music and like metal. Like it's there. Like,
oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's the complex structures. It's the sense of melody, but also the rhythms clashing against the melody, but still working with it and stuff. And you go to anything from Beethoven or even Mozart, and you're going to hear that stuff.
Yeah,
and, it's definitely, they were the metal guys of their time. For classes. I mean, Paganini. Vivaldi, Christ, that's pure metal, man.
Oh yeah. Ride of the Valkyries. I mean, come on, that's metal song.
Oh, Wagner, dude, that's the old magic right there, man.
Oh yeah,
love Wagner.
Yeah, were you always drawn to guitar then, or did it take you a while to figure out that was your instrument?
No, I pretty much I'm absolutely terrible on the drums. So self-admittedly, I'm awful. I can hold a beat for maybe 20 seconds or something, a very simple beat, and then it just falls to shit from there. So, but I think guitar was something I was always drawn to. Once I started hitting that point of not just listening to music, but wanting to find an outlet to possibly try to create it. So I was never, looking at a piano or something like that. And I think it was when Halloween's Keeper, the 7 Keys Part 1 came out. I remember I bought that album and I'm listening to it, and I'm like, wow, that's just so cool. And, it was the song Twilight of the Gods that really got me, because again, like we were just Wagner, it just it had that, I was like, wow, I really want to do that. And then a year later, Keeper of the 7 Keys Part 2 comes out, and as soon as I heard that, I was like, all right, you know what, that's it. I'm saving up my money, and I bought my first guitar off of Bud and Mine and stuff, and I just started trying to make some cool sounding noises off of it since then. So
yeah. As a teenager in the suburbs, like, what was the music scene like for you? Were you trying to start bands? Were you like going to a lot of shows? Were you involved? Was there stuff happening that you were interested in?
Yeah. I mean, so I'm not knocking the Philly scene or whatever, but when I was a teenager, especially, there wasn't a big metal scene. Okay, so you had a handful of bands, a big one, like, for like local boys, my buddy Chuck, and my buddy John, their band, Dominance. And that was born out of, Anvil Bitch, which is kind of a classic thrash band and stuff. But there really wasn't anything else in Philly that was really hard, except for maybe like Faith or Fear. And that was like towards the end of the 80s, early 90s. So the only other real claim to fame we have metal-wise is like Cinderella, So Philly, like, unless it's kind of the same now. I shouldn't say that. No, it's gotten better, like more diverse as far as like musical taste. But for a very long time, unless you were Pantera, Slayer, or Machine Head, Overkill also, you weren't really getting anybody's attention around here.
Yeah.
And especially not like a power metal type band or, progressive metal or something. That was just like, that's not a Philly thing,
Yeah.
So of course, in the late '90s, I decided I'm going to start a Euro style power metal band. So, that's fucking brilliant, right? But
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was my curiosity because having spent time in Philadelphia, knowing that there's a good hardcore community there.
Yeah.
There's a good punk community, like indie rock, whatever. But yeah, like metal and especially power metal. Like, I mean, there are obviously American bands, but you don't think about like these hubs of like American bands, like a big power metal scene existing in, I don't know, anywhere, right? Like,
Yep. No, absolutely, man. I mean, you got like, you have your specific cities at specific times that have a specific draw of some kind of sound. You get the Bay Area thrash sound. You've got the New York hardcore crossover kind of thing, just like Florida death metal, There's always a region and a specific genre that kind of seems to be associated with that particular region. Philly was just never really something. It's not like anybody said, yeah, but that Philly power metal scene. You know what I mean? Nobody ever did that, and they still don't. But thankfully, there are actually bands around here now that kind of, they definitely fit that bill. So you got like Nightwish style bands around here. 25 years ago, I never would have thought that would ever be a possibility, but it is, and that's really cool. So it's definitely matured, but I still stand by the fact that. Given the choice, most people would rather just watch a Pantera cover band than it's part of the charm around here. So there's nothing wrong with that. I love Pantera, that's cool. But nobody's coming to Philly for their power metal scene, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, the beauty of metal, and the thing I've appreciated more as I've gotten older, is like the diversity of genres, and like not everything has to be gore and death and like awful, right? Like sometimes, put on the fucking pirate costume and have some fun, right? Like,
that is it's funny because that's actually it's a long running anecdote with the singer for my other band Shadow Dance, former singer for my other band Shadow Dance, which is like power prog, and he's so when he would talk, my singer George, he's so matter of fact and so dry. And there was this one point where we were being courted by a pretty large European label back in the early 2000s. And we had this meeting and stuff, talking about like how we were going to move forward if it, something panned out. And he just says completely deadpan. He's like, listen, we have to look at this as a business transaction. They would be the employer. We're the employees. So I want each and every one of you to know that at any given point, I am fully prepared to wear a fucking pirate shirt. And he was dead serious. He wasn't even being like funny or ironic or nothing.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, and that always stuck with me. So yeah, you have to be able to appreciate the differences and stuff, because no matter what, all the music it's entertainment, right? So there's a place for the guys in the sports jerseys and the jean shorts or camo shorts or something like that, and there's a place for the guys in the makeup or the whatever, the costumes and shit, and there's a place for people in the pirate shirt. So I'd rather there be one of each than three of any one of them. You know what I mean? That makes for a more interesting scene. So especially when you can get them all to play together on one show, then it's fun.
Let's jump ahead in time and talk about Behölder. What was the genesis for this project?
Boredom, basically. being dead honest, it was boredom. So I was in a traditional type semi-power metal band for about 5-6 years called Power Theory, kind of a better known band from this area and stuff. And we did, wrote and recorded the one album that I did with them. They have several others before me. And then there was a lot of downtime because COVID hit. And, we finished up a string of shows with like opening up for like Ross the Boss and stuff. And then everything kind of came to a standstill. So I have to keep working. Yeah. And so I wound up writing about, I don't know, I guess like 2 albums worth of material for that band. Like, let's work on let's make another album while we're having this downtime. We can't play live. Let's do another album, stay in the spotlight a little bit. And then during the course of that, because there really didn't seem to be any, nobody seemed to be biting off of that for whatever reason. It was just, everybody was just kind of feeling out what was going on. So I'm sitting on this, 2 almost 3 albums worth of material for this band. And I kind of got bored writing in that style. So I wound up re-recording, like completely revamping and re-recording the first Shadow Dance album. And I got that out of my system. Cool. And then there was still nothing happening. So right around that time, I was sort of just kind of falling back in love with my inner nerd and rediscovering all these old Dungeons and Dragons books and stuff like that. And I've always loved it, but I always had it kind of in the background and stuff. And I just started kind of like finding all the old books and reading them. And I was like, man, this would be so cool to like mix with something. And I've always wanted to do a doom metal band, or at least something that people listen to and go, okay, yeah, this guy's really into doom metal, Yeah. I think no matter what I do, and especially with the people that I'm working with right now in this band, everybody's kind of coming from a power prog sort of background with their other bands. So those elements are going to naturally find their way in no matter what we do. But the main intention when I started writing this stuff out of boredom was I've always wanted to just write a batch of songs that I felt would sit alongside of, the first Candlemass album or the first Solitude Eternus album or something like that, because I've always loved those bands. And so during all that downtime, I was talking with a buddy of mine. We were just bullshitting and stuff, and his band was in some downtime, and he was like, yeah, I should just like, maybe I should just give this up and do something like a doom metal band. And I was like, listen, I got a name and I've already got like a whole folder of riffs. And he's like, maybe we should do something. He's like all into Dungeons and Dragons too. I'm like, this is like meant to be. So I started like just full bore, started writing it. And fortunately for him, his other band actually started picking up steam again. So he found himself not in a position to be able to do anything with it. But by talking that stuff through with him, it was kind of the catalyst for me to stop talking about it and actually do something about it. And by the time he was like, yeah, man, I don't know if I'm really going to be able to do anything with this. I already had like 6 songs completely written. I said, well, if you're cool with it, man, I'm just going to run with it. And so at that point, I just started reaching out to people that I've collaborated with over the years that I've always wanted to work with in some type of capacity or whatever. And I knew would fit. Even if they didn't know they would fit, I knew they would fit. And yeah, man, it all came together, and I feel really fortunate that all these guys kind of listened to this stuff and were like, yeah, okay, sure, yeah, sounds great.
Yeah, it's a cool kind of combo like genre sound, because yeah, Pale Blood Sky, like when that video dropped, I'm listening to it going like, yeah, hell yeah, and then the vocals come in and I'm like, okay, well that's not what I was expecting. Yeah. John is that. So I mean, I've worked with John through Judicator since over 10 years now at this point, and I've like either produced or co-produced and mixed like
four albums now. So we've got a long running relationship, and over the years we've actually become friends and stuff.
Yep.
Even before the Behölder stuff, and so like he's always been in the back of my mind that regardless of what it would be, I always wanted to do something with him. And so when he reached out to me to work on the not the current Judicator album, but the one before, Majesty of Decay, I was like, yeah, man, let's get this album done for you. Let's make it sound banging and stuff. And hey, by the way, I got to talk to you about something. And he was quite receptive to it, especially self-admittedly on his part, not being being very well versed in doom metal. For him, doom metal is Black Sabbath and stuff like that. So when I started throwing, names out like Solitude Aeternus, he was like, eh?
Yeah.
But he was intrigued. And that was the thing that I knew. It's not so much that if I could hook John, but if I could present something to him that would seem interesting, I know how he is, having worked with him for so many years. I knew that he would like go down that rabbit hole. And if there was something there that he found intriguing or interesting or whatever, he would commit to it.
Yeah.
And you've heard the result.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. What was the process of kind of putting together the lyrics for this record? Obviously, everything is D&D inspired, and you mentioned going through the books. But what was that process of like trying to pull material and come up with these themes and ideas?
So usually with pretty much anything I ever write, I typically, by the time I get to the end of a composition, I've got a title for it. The title may change. But the vibe of the music and everything else, by the time I get toward the end of it, I've already got kind of an idea of what I'm feeling would be a good subject matter to apply to that music. And so a lot of these things, I had the titles kind of worked out and stuff, and even a couple of them I had, just sort of like one or two sentences, like a synopsis idea, and then when it came time to really start working out lyrics and melodies, the process is basically I have this completed composition. I would throw it at John with my arrangement written out for him, like bar this to bar that is, I'm pulling verse 1 and, whatever. And so, and then I would tell him also, like, I kind of feel that this would be kind of cool about this in particular or something. And sometimes that's what he would run with, and he would look up information. But John being John, and I love him for this, sometimes he just was like, I had something else in mind. And I'm like, you tell. So for instance, like with Pale Blood Sky, as an example, he had in mind some kind of like supernatural Lovecraftian style detective story, and he was kind of inspired by the movie The Exorcist 3, which when he told me that, he's like, I'm thinking like something like, The Exorcist 3? I'm like, I love The Exorcist 3. Okay, so boom, right away we're on the same page, and I'm like, okay, but I had to like kind of keep him on the rails a little bit, because again, he's not really well versed in Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, and so he wants to do it right. It's important to him to do it right. So I send him the music. He sends me a rough draft of like some rough melodies and some pretty well worked out lyrics and stuff, but still rough. It's just a first pass, And then, and like any song, then I kind of take that and I go, okay, let's streamline this. Let's change that. Could you try this? Would you be okay with changing it to that? Blah, blah, blah. And then I would write lyrics based off of that. So I'm kind of like filling in the gaps. And then I would throw it back at him. He would try I would sing the parts, like rough demos to him and stuff that I had in mind that were different than what he had. And then he would do it. And if we agreed that it sounded good, I'd be like, okay, let's roll with that. And that was for the majority of the material. There was one song in particular that is pretty much 100% him, which is the song For Those Who Fell. He sent me his first draft of that. I didn't change a goddamn thing. That's perfect as is. The only thing I asked him to do in that song was to extend the verse parts, and I changed the arrangement to accommodate that. Because sometimes you don't know, like you hear a part, you write it out and it sounds like it's a good length, like before you move to the next thing. But depending on what a singer does, the vocal melody might lend itself to saying like, this needs to be longer because otherwise it feels cut off if you move to the next part too soon, Yeah. So that one was pretty much primarily all him. And then there were a couple of songs where he gave me like a really super rough idea. And then I just kind of took over from there and totally completed like the melody lines and lyrics. So, but regardless, it's, I would never come up with the stuff that I come up with if he hadn't come up with it first.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't come up with his stuff if I hadn't come up with the music. You know what I mean? So it's a collaborative across the board effort to make these things happen. So yeah.
Yeah. That's right. You have a guest from Tommy from Amorphous on this album. How'd you get connected with Tommy and get him to be on the album?
So I toured with those guys in Amorphous back in like 2005 or something. It was actually right when Tommy first joined the band, and it was his first tour in America with them.
Nice.
And they were like on the what was it, far from the Sun or Far Beyond the Sun album. Not one of their hit albums or anything, but they were, and it had already been out for like a year and a half. And then they came over here to do a tour, and they had the new singer. They'd lost, what's his name? Posse, I think, or something. Mm-hmm. They lost him. So we wound up touring with them for a little over 3 weeks or something. And, Amorphous has always been a big influence for me. Since like the early demo tapes they had, like the Privilege of Evil demo and stuff like that. That was always, I was really big into them. So the opportunity to tour with them was fantastic. But what was really cool was that within a couple of days, we found out that they were just really all awesome guys, really super cool guys, and a lot of fun to hang out with. And so I hit it off with them and stayed friends and stayed in contact since. And whenever they come around to the States and they tour, if I'm around, if they're around anywhere near here and I'm around, I go and I hang out with them. And it's awesome. So anyway, nice. Getting to your question, when we were working on this song, the nature of the song itself, the narrative of it, it was all about this confrontation, because it's actually like a continuation of the story that started in Pale Blood Sky. And we just, John and I were talking, and it just really made sense for this song to have space for a guest vocalist, somebody with a completely different sounding voice to John's, that could have that, that protagonist antagonist clash or whatever. And I mean, as you know, that song is probably one of them, like even musically, is one of the more darker sounding songs. That one we went pretty deep, and no pun. And so John was like, well, if we get somebody to do that, let's write the part out and all, but whoever we get is going to have to be pretty scary sounding to play the part, of the antagonist. And he said that, I'm like, well, who the hell sounds scarier than Tommy? So so I reached out to Tommy Kovasori, actually, and because Utzon doesn't have a lot of social media presence. He's on Instagram. He's got one kind of semi-secretive Facebook profile that he never logs into. And other than that, it's hit or miss with email. So I reached out to the other Tommy, who I'm buds with, and I was like, hey, pass the message along to me and see if he would be interested in doing this. And lucky for us, he was, he got back to me within a couple days. He was like, yeah, man. And so, there was some scheduling shenanigans we had to navigate and stuff. They were just getting ready to leave for tour in South America. But when he come back, he busted it out, man, and he killed it. And actually, their drummer Jan even helped with the recording session for it and stuff to make sure that everything was, done up to snuff. And we can't thank him enough because he really, really crushed it for us with those parts. We're really pleased. So
yeah, it's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
The album artwork is also super kick-ass for this album. Who did it? Who did the art for you guys?
Sofia Denkova. She's the wonderful artist who's done stuff for like Powerwolf and Elven King. And again, it's when we were putting together all of the ideas and the kind of like the wish list of what we wanted to do with this album, even though the whole point of it was to just be loose and do something fun, because we all got our other projects and stuff. It was supposed to be a no stress type thing, but we still wanted to put our best foot forward.
Yeah.
And so I've been a big fan of her work, but she wasn't the only one that I reached out to. But she was one of the only ones who got back to me immediately and enthusiastically. And that really stuck with me. So, I got a couple quotes from a few other people, but I wound up just like writing her back and saying, hey, so are you still possibly interested? And she was like, yeah, I don't know what the thing is that you're talking about, but it's cool. So her and I essentially kind of hammered out a rough idea of an image concept. And then she did her thing. And we just, every time she sent an update, we said, wow, yeah, keep doing more of that. And then she would send an update. We were like, fuck yeah, keep doing that. Yeah. Nice. and there you go. Final artwork. It was just, it was like, holy shit. So it was a really, it was an awesome experience. She's an incredibly friendly and helpful and enthusiastic person. So we really hope to collaborate with her again on another album and stuff. I hope that happens, Yeah.
I know Judicator just put out record with Black Lion. Is that kind of relationship how you guys ended up working out a deal to release this album?
Well, so that's something recent.
Okay.
That was actually there's a little bit of me doing some legwork for them. So I kind of put that towards Black Lion, like, hey, because they're very happy with the Beholder stuff. That was a done thing since last August.
Okay.
That's when we signed a contract. But I also co-produced and mixed the current Judicator album. And the head of Black Lion Records is, I think, looking to bolster their roster with higher quality acts. And so once the Judicator album was done, mixed and mastered and out there, kind of sent a couple songs along and wow. And so next thing I know, I keep hearing like, wow, I keep listening to that album. Do you think they'd be interested in something? And I said, I don't know. Let me talk to John. And so I kind of maybe a little bit sort of, grease the wheels and help facilitate a little bit of conversation. And then it just went off from there. And now Judicator will be re-releasing this album through Black Lion Records at some point in the near future. And I think it's a win-win for everybody involved.
Album is out Friday. This is kind of a fun side project for you, but what's your plan or hope for this album? Is it to try to play some shows and tour? Is it just like happy to be done and, you know, see what comes?
Very happy to be done. So obviously very happy to be done because this has been a very long buildup. Yeah. You know, and we've been full steam ahead with the hype train for so long that it's like I feel like when release day comes, I'm going to be like the car at the end of the Blues Brothers. You know, I'm just going to collapse into a million pieces.
Sure. Yeah.
You know? But as far as future plans go, so anything along the lines of extensive touring or something like that, that's not in the cards. It's not what anybody wants to do. This wasn't started with the intention of saying if it becomes successful enough, let's go hit the road for a month at a time each year. No, nobody wants to do that. We've all got our responsibilities. I've got a house I got to maintain. I got a wife and 3 cats I got to, remind I exist and stuff like that. And, everybody's got their family lives. They got their regular lives, but this was meant to be something freeing and fun. And something to get away from not only the confines of our other bands and projects and stuff like that, but also just like Dungeons and Dragons itself, it's supposed to be escapism. It's supposed to be let's go wandering off in this weird ass world and write some crazy shit, and maybe hopefully somebody comes along with us and gets into it. So that being the case, we're still open to shows, but we're all spread out across the country, right? So logistically, anything we do has to make sense because plane tickets are involved, right? Yeah. So like when we did the video for Pale Blood Sky and the group photos, that was a small miracle that we pulled that off in the window that we had. But we all flew out to Salt Lake City because that's where John lives. And 2 of the guys are in Minnesota and the bass player Michael is in Arizona. So we all somehow coordinated to arrive Friday morning in Salt Lake City, scout out a location for band photos, get that done, and then the next day up and early, 7:30 in the morning, go to the video studio and shoot this video and stuff. And then all of us wound up leaving the next morning, like early in the morning. It was tight, but we got it all done. And we're looking to do that again. We might switch the location to Minnesota this time because it's a little bit of a halfway point and 2 of the guys are there. So I'm sure they'll be happy about that. Yeah. But that's right now. Our goals are we obviously just getting this album out there and promoting it in the ways that we're able. But we're making already loose plans to try to get together at the end of summer to do another kind of like long weekend, content weekend, maybe do another video. I don't want to comment too much on that because we have a couple other things that we have up our sleeve already that we're, that we're working towards and stuff, which will be cool. But then there's also already been some hints at possible festival invites. And so that stuff we're very open to because, again, logistically it makes sense. If we're going to do something, then it has to be very worthwhile. And a good festival is definitely worthwhile. So we're just kind of looking at things in those terms right now, one-off kind of shows that really make sense, festival appearance if possible, some other, cool content weekend sort of things. And then just mixing that with a bunch of like traditional and non-traditional methods of kind of promoting ourselves and keeping ourselves out there and stuff. We've got a few things already kind of worked out to keep ourselves out there for the rest of the year. Yeah. And in the meantime, we've already started working on material for the next album. So got about I guess musically speaking, probably about 4 songs ready to be passed off to John for his first draft of, mumbling and lyrics. And I think probably about like 4, maybe 5 other incomplete compositions that are, one of which is really bugging the shit out of me. Can't seem to crack it yet, but I'm tenacious, so I'm gonna keep plugging at it because there's something really, really cool there. I can't crack it yet, but I'm almost there. So we got a handful of new material that's definitely being worked on in various stages, and some other plans that we're looking to do. Some collaborative efforts also with possibly another band, with another business as well. So yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in the immediate future.